This is Future Radio.
It's Norris today, of course. Business Life all the way through until 2 o'clock. Looking in the timeline, of course, it says tweet from Tips FGM now, but to go on Future Radio listening, guys, and delighted to say, not only is he in the timeline, he's in the studio.
Yay.
Good afternoon and welcome, Julian.
Hi there, nice to be
Hi,
here.
Julian.
Are you a big tweeter, by the way? Twitter run?
I've got into it big style recently when somebody said it's the way to go forward. I'm about 2 or 3 years late, but we're doing it.
Oh, you're doing it.
Yeah,
We're doing it well, yeah. Do you engage in Twitter conversations, or are you just a kind of post a thing and leave it?
Well, I'm post a thing and leave it at the moment, but I would like to get into conversation. I'd like people to talk to me, because that seems to be the way.
Well, it's interesting,
definitely.
isn't it? And I think Twitter confuses a lot of people, I think, because they say, I don't want to tell people what I'm having for lunch. And yet, if you're in an office... But if you're in an office, that's really, what's in your sandwiches there? Have you got, you want to draw a coffee or a cup of tea? And you can have all those little conversations on Twitter, I think. But it's not to everyone's taste, is it, I think?
It just seems slightly bizarre to tell everybody every move you make. But from a business point of view, it's getting some interest. So,
Definitely.
I think so.
We're on it.
It's a route to market, as we say. Anyway, we've got to say, we've talked about Tips FGM. So it's Julian Hammond, Tips for Good Management.
Tips for Good Management, yes, that's right.
Where did the name come from?
Well, the name came about, we were running a programme called Tips for Good Management. We used to be Gemini training a lot of years ago now. And the accountant said, look, you best become limited. And the Gemini had already gone as a limited company.
Okay, because that could be quite a common name, I suppose.
Yeah, unfortunately. So we looked around and thought, well, it's simple. Let's call the company the most popular programme we run. And the TIPS is an acronym. It stands for team, is the T bit. So we think about all the stuff that makes teams work.
Yeah.
All about relationships in team. The I is about individual, so managing people. And that's a sort of 360 approach. So managing your boss, maybe, managing colleagues, managing subordinates, all that type of thing. The P is about process, so does the system of work actually do what it should do? And the S is managing yourself, so in there would be stuff like time management and self-management subjects. So it became a generic course, which we then tailor to individuals, so it works really well.
And then became the name of your company.
And then became the name of the company, yeah.
Which makes sense. And so presumably that's one of many courses that you do then, Julian. So broadly speaking, what is it that you do?
Well, my usual answer is that we help companies make more money, because essentially it's about using those 4 topics to help companies do things better through their people. So primarily we talk about offering management and leadership programs. That's actually what we do. But of course everybody wants something slightly different. So we've come up with this idea of tailoring it and now offering quite a wide range of ways of delivering that training too, because that's what the marketplace wants.
And you mentioned delivery of training, because of course I know in the old school you'd have sort of didactic consultancy types would turn up and just lecture at you for 10 minutes kind of thing. From the tone of your voice there, I'm guessing that's not quite how you do it, is that right?
You mean the death by PowerPoint approach?
Well, isn't it? I can remember having a quality induction, and I noticed on the bottom of the guy's screen it said 75 out of 150, and I tapped him on the shoulder and said, I've got to go home today. And it was like, slide number 76, Richard. And you
oh my gosh.
But how do you do it, Julian?
Well, the world's changing so much. I mean, the stand-up and deliver in the classroom is beginning to disappear because people don't have time for that. It's expensive to send people away. So now we've got a number of ways of doing it. We've now got a live platform on the internet. It's called Learn It Live that hosts the platform.
Oh, wow, okay.
So I go on there live with a subject, and you can have hundreds of people waiting for you from anywhere in the world.
Oh, that's amazing.
But the beauty for them is they turn up to a course which is quite reasonably priced, and they haven't got to travel anywhere, and we record it as well. And providing you're happy at going live, it's a bit like broadcasting now. If you're broadcasting live, providing you can do that, you can create a virtual classroom. It works really, really well.
Do you need lots of kit for it? I mean, have you got a TV studio?
I was going to ask that. Is it expensive to set up?
I bet he has some sort of bit of makeup on and you get your hair done, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do have to appear on video, so I do.
You have to pay attention to your
Can't do it in your dressing gown.
Yeah, that wouldn't be the first time. I do get some interesting comments from the staff about my appearance. But no, we get ready simply by putting some screens around us. We don't like to
that's clever.
to make it a studio because it is a working office. And I think if you watch the news programmes these days, it sort of doesn't matter if there's something else going on.
Yeah.
Providing it doesn't interrupt, it makes it a bit more real.
It's like the BBC, isn't it? I was watching the news the other night, and
Yeah.
there's some old lady with a shopping bag sort of went up the stairs behind the news, and now very serious things in Ukraine.
I think that
and
was Moira Stewart, wasn't it?
Was it? She's not an old lady with a shopping bag.
I was teasing.
Please don't write in.
Well, we do our best to shut stuff out.
Yeah.
But yes, it's normally done in our office in Dereham, and we run them all sorts of times of the day because we've got marketplaces in the Americas, we've got marketplaces in the Middle and Far East. So we pitch them at certain times of the day and just get on with it, really. It's really good fun.
So you could be 8 in the morning or 10 at night, that kind of sleep.
Depending on what the marketplace is looking for.
And how many people sort of get involved in that then?
Oh, it varies. I mean, it's one step beyond webinars. You know, webinars have thousands of people sometimes. We're talking about, what have we had up to now? We had registered on one particular session 60 people. And the more the merrier. The thing is, if you're being interactive, you've got to keep it down to a reasonable number.
Manageable.
So you can manage the interaction, because you don't want it to be just you talking. Is what Richard said, you know, a stand up and present, that's not what you want anymore.
No, it's not very engaging for people, is it? And particularly, I think also if you're talking to a computer screen, you can get a bit myopic in some of those, hi, I'm a guru, and you're listening to me for the next 60 minutes. And people want greater reality, don't they?
Yeah. Definitely. And webinars used to be like that, didn't they? And so now it's, as you say, more interactive.
Much more interactive. Well, if you get onto the system and you come in as a learner or a delegate, you've got lots of ways of interacting with me. You can obviously go on the mic if you wish. We can see up to half a dozen people at the same time. Or you can just say how you're feeling. Some little emoticons, some little buttons you can push that say, well, I'm feeling happy, or slow down, or I'm confused. There's a little chat room too. You can send messages in. And what I do, I normally have a wingman, which is my son Carl, who sits there and he will pick up any comments coming in. Okay. And if necessary, say, Julian, I've got a couple of questions, can you address them? Yeah. So it becomes really, really interactive.
That's very sophisticated, actually, because you talked about voice and video and emoticons and chat room. That's 4 or 5 different channels that you can engage with your delegates.
Well, also, we've got a whiteboard, so, you know, we can actually put somebody onto the whiteboard and say, well, just write something on there.
It's an electronic whiteboard. They can write on the screen.
Yep, so it just allows somebody access to that. It's okay. Or you could put a model on a whiteboard, for example, and say, well, can you put your percentage, how you feel about something, and get people to write stuff.
Wow.
They keep
very interactive. And do people take part, or do they get a bit nervous, do you think? I think, I won't do that. Or do they actually think, I'll give it a go?
Well, most people give it a go. We haven't had much hesitancy so far. I think it's about creating the right environment where people are quite safe. And they just get on with it, and often we put people on a mic as well. People can metaphorically or on the system put their hands up, so you can take questions. You can upload video. It's great.
And how many have you done then of these? So?
Oh, we must be up near the 20 mark now. Okay. It's relatively new for us, but we're now getting fairly accustomed to doing it. We're now doing it at least on a weekly basis, and we aim to do a lot more, because the marketplace seems to want it. We just need to tell them we're doing it.
Yes.
Just connect the two together.
There's, 5 billion people in the world, or whatever it is, and you don't need only need a small percentage of that tuning in to have a very nice business and income. And also, I guess you're making use of a product that you already have. Yeah. So it allows you to get into market in a different way.
Absolutely. And as Anna says, it's, for me, the office is part of the house. We have a purpose-built office on the house. So for me, I can walk down to my dressing room and sit there, providing I don't turn the video on too quick.
Or just Carl say, Dad, just turn it up a bit. And then once I was talking to I did a Skype call with a client, and I revealed myself in a small way. And I said to my client, you look really smart today. You got a nice shirt on and stuff like that. And he said, well, this is a business meeting, Richard. And I thought, crikey, I haven't even shaved. I just got and grabbed a T-shirt. I thought that'll do. And it's interesting how the social cues change when you go to a Skype or a webinar environment.
It does, yeah.
You don't need to wear your shirt and tie in the same way, do you, really?
Yeah, and well, shirt and tie is another subject altogether. It seems that shirt and tie isn't the appropriate attire in that medium, because you think about it, you're creating a learning environment. Why would you want to be formally dressed? Because you want to encourage people to take part. Therefore, you need to make it so that people feel comfortable.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Shirt and ties don't do that for some reason or other.
No, it's very true. And I can't tell you the last time I wore a tie in business.
No. Strange.
And yet, because as you're quite right, from a learning environment, you don't want to be in a one-up position of saying, I'm the smart professor and you're just the scruffy student kind of thing. So we're actually colleagues working together, and I'm going to share with you. Yeah.
But it's a much broader subject. The whole idea of people learning is an interesting one, because if you've been through the school systems, you turn up to a training session, doesn't matter whether it's real or virtual, there's some hang-ups. I'm normally taught by somebody standing talking at me. Yep. I can ask questions by raising my hand, or I wait for a moment to do that. And it can make people very uncomfortable when they come into a training room. So anything we can do to sort of take that discomfort out.
Do you think they're expecting teachers to walk in? Don't know what to do. Yeah. And I've noticed myself people using pads a lot more, iPads, to take notes rather than pens and paper. Yeah. Which you can't say tear off a sheet and then do this exercise. I've only got a pad. Yeah. So you're actually in the vanguard of this technology then, because I don't hear of too many other similar organisations using it to the same extent as yourself.
No, locally, I don't know anybody else that are. I think the college might be using something similar, but not distributing it or broadcasting it in quite the same way. I mean, we know there are lots of people around the globe doing it, but I think we're one of the first locally to do it.
Yeah, because I know UEA have their MOOC.
That's right, yeah.
But what you're doing is much more interactive, I think, than the way they've approached it.
Yeah. Well, the biggest problem I have is people say, "Oh, you're doing a webinar."
Yes.
No, I go, it's not a webinar. A webinar is very passive. You will be involved at some. Well, if you choose to be, you can be involved very, very much, and therefore it makes the learning different. I think if you're passive, just listening, I don't listen terribly well, and a lot of people don't. So to learn that way for me is just awful. So therefore, I don't make that the way I teach others either.
That's interesting. So are there times when you're not on screen and the screen has then just got a model or a picture, or you're writing notes on the screen for people and saying, this is what you want to take down, guys?
On that medium, I'm always on screen.
Right.
And there's also there's the model or the whiteboard going on at the same time. It's an interesting question, Richard. One thing I found that's different from the training room is, you know, if you're talking to a group of people and somebody might be on an iPad or talking, it's quite distracting. Actually, in a virtual classroom, it works, because Carl is sat there interacting with people who might be answering certain questions while I can continue to present. So I'm concentrating on the quality of the presentation and the materials that people are seeing, uploading video, stuff like that. And he'll sit there and field any questions and stop me if necessary and say, you know, Julian, there's some particularly interesting items coming up here. Can you address those? So, again, it makes it really focused on the learner rather than just the deliverer.
And
I
quality
like
as well, real quality, because as you say, you're not being distracted by people interrupting you at the wrong time, or it's all managed and people are given the opportunity to feedback as well.
That's right. I mean, it's nothing worse than somebody distracting you. Nothing worse as a deliverer.
And I hadn't really thought about it like that, because in a classroom, I could see you might be the lecturer or the workshop or whatever you want to call yourself, facilitator. And that's quite a relatively easy space to manage single-handed. But if you've got electronics, it would be like trying to teach in a classroom whilst tweeting at the same time, and people think you're not looking at me, you're looking at your screen. So as a wingman, a co-pilot, Carl, good afternoon, Carl, if you're listening.
I hope he is, yes.
Yes.
Carl, you better be.
Wake up. And but actually, it's a good tip to have, that if you've got a good wingman next to you, then the learning experience is better and everyone wins.
Yes, it effectively gives two opportunities for that all-important interaction. It's a word I've used a lot, but you don't have that interaction and people won't learn. They'll just really not absorb it anywhere near as much.
This is Future Radio.
You were listening to Richard Hawley there, and the track was Serious. We were playing that for Carl Hammond, who is Julian Hammond's trusty wingman. And as trusty wingman, does he make the trusty wingman teas and get the trusty wingman sandwiches at lunch and stuff like that?
He did that for his apprenticeship.
That's a meanie. But I take my hat off to you, because I'd be exactly the same. Now, Julian, you run Tips for Good Management Limited.
Yes.
And that's sort of a development company, and you're working with clients to help them improve their business by improving their people and stuff like that. And we were just talking before the track about didactic, old-fashioned sorts of learning, and how people turn up to the classroom and squeak on the chalkboard for 2 hours, and that's not what you do, I think. So what is your approach to learning?
Now, we threw those techniques away several years ago.
Good, glad to hear it.
Well, a client of mine actually introduced me to the subject of accelerated learning, which we now call brain-friendly training.
I've heard of accelerated learning, and is that when you have to play Enya 4 times a day to get people's brainwaves in tune?
It's a very broad range of techniques, really. It goes right from playing music through to maybe having some smells in the room that encourages certain moods. That's the fairly extreme end of it. But the main point of it is to help people be comfortable, create the environment where they're happy to learn. The example I use, a very simple example, is as children learn so much in the very formative years. You learn all the most important stuff up to about 5 years old. Yeah. Then you go to school, and they spoil all that because they tell you they've got to learn a certain way.
I'm with you.
So we return to this idea of you can open people's brains up, not literally, but metaphorically open them up. You can pour stuff in there and it will stick. Now, we do that by, they have fun, we get them comfortable, we play games. They all have some connection to the subject, though. We use this term called sizzle and substance. So
Scissors and substance.
No, not scissors.
Did you say?
Sorry, that's my pronunciation.
Sizzle.
Sizzle and substance, yeah.
I know sizzle and sausage from sort of marketing data.
No, that's your breakfast.
Oh, is it? Okay, then I won't talk about that.
No, sizzle is about, it's entertaining, it's lively, it's engaging, but it's got to do something. It's got to actually leave somebody with some learning as well. So we use both approaches. But you can come to one of our training sessions and learn about some fairly deep subjects, but you'll start off by playing a game, maybe family fortunes, but there'll be something on the back of that you'll take away.
So I can hear people reaching for their keypads to text in. Tell us about family fortunes then.
Yeah, well, there's a subject that's about how we respond in certain situations. It's one that, Rich, I know you know about, called ego states.
Yes, that's one of mine.
So rather than talk about ego states and drive everybody to drink, you start by saying, okay, 2 teams, your 2 families. If your boss said your work was poor, how would you react? Any number of answers on the flip chart, please. And when people write down things like, can I call you an ambulance? You what? You can imagine some of the responses we get.
I can.
Within those responses is probably every transaction, every ego state that you could want to see.
Right.
And straight away, people are in. You've got them.
Well, that's brilliant,
and because people listening may not have come across ego states, in a sentence, an ego state is, how would you describe it?
Oh gosh, it's a great question. I put it is in the state of mind during any particular moment.
That'll do. And then you've got different states of mind.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. Yeah.
And I like games. I love playing games. So actually, the sort of going to not a training session, but an interactive learning session. Perhaps we should remove the word training because it
has a connotation. You're
it does, doesn't it? Really? You train perhaps dogs to go.
It's slightly patronising. I always think
I
training.
Agree with you,
You don't train a human being.
No.
They're not there to catch a ball or throw a stick, collect a stick or whatever.
No,
absolutely.
Engage them.
Human beings can learn and engage and evolve as people. So.
That's right. When you think about, this is not a criticism of education, so please don't think it is anybody out there. However, the education is delivered in a certain way. You're sat in a classroom, there's certain rules you've got to be obeyed, you're told what to do, when to do it, and it's not very interactive. It can't be because the numbers of people that are going through. What we tend to do is throw those rules away. And get people to think about their own, I call it a charter for their session. So what rules do you want in place?
Yeah.
Because reasonable people create reasonable rules, and guess what? They then abide by them, and they're then comfortable in that environment.
Do you find that people can find that a bit challenging first time out? Because they coming in, they think, right, the norm is I'm going into this environment, I know what to expect, and you sort of turn the tables on them and say, clean sheet of paper, guys, let's co-create this.
Yeah, it can. You see 1 or 2 people's faces, you get this moment of, what, me now? Have I got to do this? But normally if you put them into groups of people, it's not long before they're into the discussion and start to make their own rules. It doesn't take very long.
How interesting.
And then at that moment they're going, oh, this is going to be a bit different. Right, gotcha. That's all I want to do is just change your thinking very early on.
And so I'm curious, what kind of other things do you do in terms of games? Is it board games and simulations and things, or?
Oh, yeah, we use... Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, for example, rather than ask people what might be the outcome. There's a great subject that talks about engaging employees. And if you do employee engagement properly, you get some bottom line benefits.
Yeah.
If you just deliver that as a set of numbers, it's as boring as heck, However, we have a family millionaire type game in small groups and pairs, maybe. You've got to find out which of the 4 answers that comes up do you think's the right one. So if you engage employees properly, what % of extra profit do you think companies make on average? So there'd be 4 choices.
Okay, so 5%, 10%,
yeah,
that kind of thing.
So by the very nature of discussing the 4 answers, they're thinking about the subject rather than just, well, that's a number then, isn't it?
But I think that is the way that learning is going in general, in terms of certainly with my children at 5 and 7. My 5-year-old goes in and plays all day, every day, and then he'll come home and he'll say things to me, and I'm thinking, wow, you learned that at school today, and it's all play-led learning. And even the teachers admit, essentially, they come in and play. But they learn phenomenal things. I can't remember, there was something he said the other day, and I couldn't believe that he'd learnt that day, but when all he does is play. But obviously it sinks in and it works, and it's a good way to learn.
Yeah, and your point's well made, Anna, because we learn so well using those approaches. At what point when we grow up do people start saying, well, you can't learn that way anymore because grown up you're not allowed to? Come on. If that's a natural way of learning, we return to it. And people just get hold of it so quickly.
Mind you, I'm aware as a sort of university lecturing person that you need less qualifications the higher you go. And I know that a lot of my colleagues who are very well qualified and lovely people don't have necessarily a lot of teaching experience. So they will teach in a didactic way, in the way that their professor taught them and their professor taught them. So yet people in the nursery schools and the primary schools are well qualified and well educated people. And I think it's a shame, because I think people like yourself are clearly doing a good job out there. More training for us, I think. Or more brain-friendly engagement.
Yes, I was going to say engagement, not training. Not training, never training.
We're going to have fun as a lecturer, and
absolutely. But I do think you've got a real point about making people comfortable as well in their learning environment, because it's irrelevant what you wear.
Yes.
If you're going to learn a new skill or encourage your development as a person and in your role, in your job, then does it really matter if you've got a tie on?
Well,
but people get so hung up on
I had
that.
a supervisor, a tutor, who was absolutely fantastic. However, he would take his shoes and socks off and sit on the floor to
That's different.
Well, exactly. And you could see half of them were like, that's a bit interesting.
Well, I turn that around with the group and I say to them, one of the subjects I want you to talk about and agree as part of your charter is what the dress code will be. Now, for effect,
That's
I
nice.
often turn up in a shirt and tie and maybe a suit.
Yeah.
Because I know that's what they expect.
Yeah.
Management trainers are dressed to the hilt, power dressed and all the rest
Oh,
of
that's
it.
right.
But that moment when they say, OK, we want to dress comfortably, my shirt and tie and jacket comes off.
Right.
And they just love it.
Yeah,
You just down
that's
to your
such a
string
good point.
vest and guys.
Almost. I did say
Or
shirt,
your
didn't
dressing
I?
gown.
Mind you, do you know, it's funny that I have a colleague who teaches presentation skills, and what he does, it's the same thing as you're talking about engagement. He turns up with a very scruffy suit, his tie's covered in stains, his shirt's ripped, he's got a pair of old shoes where he's knackered them all up, and one of his toes is poking out. And he sets up the sort of dean of the department saying, now I'd like to introduce you to kind of Bob Smith, who's going to talk about presentation skills, and round of applause. And this old guy shambles in, mumbles for half an hour,
Yeah.
his slides don't work, and then he says, thank you for listening, that'll do, and I'm off.
Yeah, it's awful.
And he leaves them to stew for 5 minutes. Everyone's going, what a load of rubbish. Of course, he then comes back with his sort of jeans and his T-shirt on and saying, okay, let's start again.
Yeah.
The point is that they all remember the dress and the way the person is, in the way that if your delegates are comfortable in jeans and T-shirt, they'll remember it more than being in a suit.
Yeah.
You know?
The acid test is when what people get from it. The number of times when we review the course, so these courses are often 6 or 12 months long.
Yeah.
At the end of it, you sit down and review it, and they say something strange is happening. And I say, well, what's that? So, well, I'm in situations in the workplace. And bear in mind, this is helping people to manage and lead more effectively. So you want them to be able to do something. And it's not just a game. And they said to me, I was in this situation, something popped into my head. A game, a tune or something, and I remembered it from the course. How does that work? So I've no idea really, but it does, doesn't it?
It does.
And it just,
That's fantastic.
you get that feedback an awful lot.
That's really interesting. And
I do just going on to touch again about how you look and how you feel in business.
Yeah.
I think it is so important to be comfortable and to be, because ultimately if you're comfortable and confident in how you look and feel, then you're going to be comfortable and confident delivering the service that you're offering or doing your job or your role. So I think, and sometimes being in a uniform, you can hide behind that uniform, and
Yes,
that
you
will
can.
in itself will make you comfortable.
Yeah.
But other times, as you say, power dressing isn't necessarily everybody's cup of tea.
no, and we know from radio that Anna regularly turns up in her onesie. So, and
My leopard print onesie,
you live
yeah.
your values, don't you, Anna? And
I do,
I've had
I
several
do.
people say to me, actually, I'm like, what Anna's onesie like this week? And doesn't she get hot in her onesie in the
Yeah, I do
studio?
a little bit, yeah.
We like to keep it. We like to keep it sensible here on this
Exactly.
radio show. Now, in terms of business and development, what does sort of 2014 have in store for you? New products, new services, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, we're now pushing forward with the Learn It Live platform that I mentioned earlier on,
Yep.
which we see that as being the future. It's obviously because of the cost and the people we can reach out to internationally. That's the big one for
Absolutely.
us. So we're marketing that very, very hard now. And the beauty of it is we can offer qualifications across that as well. Most people think you've got to turn up at a fairly formal classroom to get a qualification, and we are approved by the Chartered Management Institute, a nice body by Royal Charter, and they've said we can run courses across the internet by that platform and offer qualifications. So we see building on that angle of accessibility plus formal qualification plus the way we deliver being maybe the thing that will build our business next year
That's really interesting.
or this year.
Yeah.
And certainly the other bit, we've got a blended learning approach which includes e-learning as well. So there's lots of products out there that we can offer to get to people and help them out, really.
So you can do you could do a CMI sort of leadership course through your business and never have met the person face to face. It's all just done electronically.
That's entirely possible.
Gosh.
Apart from obviously on video. However, a physical meeting doesn't have to actually take place anymore.
And how do delegates have to do coursework and stuff to get those qualifications?
Well, there's so many guided learning hours, which means
Right.
face-to-face time with me on across the internet. They can include that as a guided learning hour. They have an assignment set at the end of the period. That's included in part of the learning hours. They might do some self-study. You can obviously check that when you go into the virtual classroom. But apart from that's all they have to do. Providing they can pass that final assignment that's independently assessed, I should say, very quickly, then they get the qualification.
And you're only cheating yourself if you're going to cheat the system, aren't
Yeah.
you? So,
That's right.
so it doesn't matter. Anna, you're going to say
I was
something.
just going to say how fantastic this is, because obviously in days gone by, you would have had to go and sit in a classroom, and the associated costs for that, for the employer as well as the employee, are phenomenal. And so it becomes, untenable that you can't send all your employees on courses to learn new skills. Whereas now e-learning has opened up a whole new spectrum of learning for employees, because employers can afford it, because there's the associated cost savings of not having to send them to a hotel in Maidenhead for a week to learn something.
Right.
And obviously, the delivery, you can deliver to more people in one sitting, rather than having to be limited to a classroom that takes maybe 20.
Yeah, it's very cost effective, and it cuts down the logistics enormously too. And I think our difficulty at the minute is just getting that message out there. And the other thing we can offer is we can help in-house trainers to use these platforms as well. I'm quite happy to run a train the trainers and help people to deliver their own materials.
That's a good idea, because
okay,
you've got the kit and the studio and the expertise and the wingman, of course, that's to keep it, and so people can come in, I think.
Well, we've learned how to use it, and we can pass that learning on.
Brilliant.
Very nice. If people out there listening thinking, I quite fancy an e-course, I'd like to learn how to deliver an e-course, then it would seem that Julian Hammond is the person to get in touch with. So, so as you said, how do we get in touch with you then?
Well, telephone, I'm in Dereham, that's 01362 699 392.
That's 699
392.
392, yeah.
My email address, always happy to receive emails, is Julian, that's Julian, at tipsfgm, tipsfgm, get it right, tipsfgm.co.uk.
Is there a website?
Website, yeah, www.tipsfgm, tipsfgm,
theme forming here,
Yes,
.co.uk, strangely.
Very
and I've
good.
got access to all the things we talked about, e-learning, the virtual platform, it's all on there as well, that website.
Very good. And if you look in our
Fabulous.
Future Radio timeline, about 12:20, there was a tweet there from Julian that I have
Follow
retweeted.
Julian,
So you can
yeah.
follow Julian on Twitter.
Brilliant.
And engage
we'll-
with him and talk
I
to
think
him
so.
on
We'll-
Twitter.
we'll give
Tweet
you-
on.
Tweet on. We'll give you all these numbers out to the show. I think round of applause for Julian.
Thank you,
Very
Julian,
good,
for
very
coming
nice.
in. Thank
pleasure.
you.
We'd
Thanks very
Really
much.
interesting.
Oh, it's an
Thank
absolute pleasure. We'll have to get you back and see how the e-learning goes throughout the year, because I think that's a good story to follow for people in business, actually. It's
Definitely.
going
I'd love to, anytime.
to be a real
Anytime.
game changer. Let's just take a little break.